Hello, welcome to the Satellite Marketcast podcast, where we feature key executives from leading satellite companies worldwide, talk about their company, their careers, industry trends, and other insights on the exciting satellite communication industry. I'm your host, Virgil Labrador, Editor-in-Chief of Satellite Markets and Research, inviting you to another informative podcast with our featured guest today. Well, welcome everybody to this edition of the Satellite Marketcast podcast, and our guest today is Ken Grelck. He's the Global Communications Industry Lead of Capgemini Engineering. If you haven't heard of Capgemini Engineering, you've probably seen their work, which is quite extensive. And here to explain that and various trends in the industry is Ken. Ken leads the communications sector for Capgemini's engineering and R&D business line in the Americas and Asia Pacific. Capgemini is one of the world's leaders in engineering and R&D services, according to Zinnov, a leading global management and strategy consulting firm. Based in the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina area, Ken has been a communications executive at the company for the past 5 years, initially with Aricent and then Altran before Capgemini acquired Altran in April 2020. Prior to Aricent and Altran, he spent many years in the telecommunication industry, working at Nortel, Calix, and SIC Systems, among others. So, Ken, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you, Virgil. I appreciate you inviting me to the discussion today.
It's a pleasure having you, Ken. So, Ken, for the benefit of our listeners who aren't familiar with Capgemini Engineering, could you give us a brief overview of your company and what you do, especially for the satellite industry?
Yeah, glad to. So, Capgemini Engineering is a large company. We're 270,000 employees around the world, almost $20 billion of revenue. Our engineering group, I'm in Capgemini Engineering, is a group of 50,000 engineers on a global basis, and we bring those people together and we help clients execute projects. So this is a pooled resource of engineers that we can pull on and pull out expertise from to help customers as they want to execute projects. It's a much more efficient and quick way to do things than to go recruit off the street. Everybody knows that there's challenges in getting engineers off the street. In the satellite segment, we've been working actually with satellite companies for about 33 years. We started off as part of Hughes Network Software Systems. So our heritage for the last 30 years goes right back into satellite with Hughes. And we've had a few instances and iterations over the time, but now we're part of Capgemini. And what we do is we are a system integrator for our clients. We come in and we help our clients from consulting through architecture development, designing, software development, hardware development, testing, all the way to operations. And then throughout that, we focus on helping our clients automate testing and operations and provisioning and things like that. So a turnkey system integrator to help our clients, especially around satellite communications, generate the capabilities and the functions that they need in order to go to market.
Wow, quite a pedigree you have. You started with Hughes, which is very well known in the industry, of course. It's still out there. It's an industry name. And you've been doing business 30 years with 50,000 engineers. You can practically do anything, right, Ken?
Well, we could do a lot. Yes, we can do a whole lot of things. I try not to ever go to where we do everything for everyone. We try to focus in on certain competencies. But yeah, there is a tremendous amount of capability when you've got an army of 50,000.
So, Ken, you basically do projects and consulting in behalf of your customers, right? You don't do anything yourselves. You're not a manufacturer or a service provider, unlike other companies.
Yeah, no, we are not. Actually, we are a solution provider for our clients. The focus is to bring our competencies to our clients and help them solve their problems. And when we finish a project, one of the things that we really pride ourselves on, when we finish a project, we turn over the IPR to our clients. That way our clients can run their business. They're not beholden to us. We help them solve their problem and then give them what we've done. And then they can run their business. Now, if we've done a good job, they'll continue working with us, right? And that's what we expect. But it's not that we're looking to retain our IPR and then learn what we've done with client A and then go sell it to client B, or to create our own solution and start competing with one of our clients. Instead, we enable it. We create the project. Let's say that we're writing some code for a client. We'll write that code, and at the end, we turn over the source code to the client.
Right. So you're dealing really with a third party here that, because there's some other companies there who've actually built lines of products and have certain develop engineering expertise. And then they have a consulting division that they start. But at the same time, there could be potential conflict because some of course, their areas of expertise, they could be potential competitors.
They absolutely could. They absolutely could. So we encourage our clients to think of us as extensions of their team that can staff up and staff back down. So you can, if you've got some immediate needs, you need 20, 30, 50 engineers, we can bring them in, but you don't have to retain them and keep them for 50 years, right? We can bring them in, they can do a project for a year or two, and then we can take and move them on to something else. But throughout that, they act as our clients' employees. They act on our clients' behalf, and whatever IPR they create becomes the ownership of our client.
But they also, a customer of yours can also save a lot of money by, instead of them hiring their own people, right, and being locked into long-term contracts, they don't have all that overhead.
There's multiple elements of that, right? So if you've got a project and you need to staff up 20 people, right? Not only are you faced with hiring those people in the long-term employment scenario, but think about the amount of time that goes into recruiting, interviewing, training. We estimate it's about 100 hours per employee to get them to a point where they're fully onboarded and productive. So if you're doing 20 employees, 100 hours employee, that's a lot of lost time.
Right.
Whereas if we can bring people in, we can staff them up, we can get them there quickly, we've got experience, and they can become productive much more quickly. And then our clients don't have that long-term overhang of, well, now I got 50 employees, what am I going to do?
And they have a shorter lead time, right? Because you can start immediately. You can staff them immediately. Whereas hiring,
get it done in a couple of weeks. I won't say it's quite immediately, but it's in a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks is better than sometimes you hire somebody, he won't be available for 3 months from now. He has to leave his other company and other personal stuff that he has to do, right? Yeah.
Well, and just the whole recruiting process. It'll you want to staff up a team of 20, it'll take 6 months.
Yeah, right. And you can do it in 2 weeks.
Yeah. So it's a pretty powerful engine that's there and that we can help our clients with.
Great. Right. So for the satellite industry, give us an overview of what core competencies that you can offer and maybe highlight some examples of what you've done.
Okay, be glad to. So in the satellite segment, we focus primarily on satellite communications, at least my team does, in enabling the communication between the satellites, the ground, the modems, etc., the user terminals. It may be an example, one of the examples that'll give a fairly decent scope is we're working right now on a HAPS project where we are working at HAPS as a high altitude platform station, a drone that we are working to equip with one of our satellite customers with wireless equipment that'll ride on the drone, as well as UEs that'll be on the ground and ground station terminal equipment so that we can get a drone up in the air and fly it at 20,000 or 20 kilometers and be able to take advantage of wireless communications off that drone. So that's one example. We took on a full turnkey solution prime contractor position here. We've got a few other vendors that we're working with, and we bring together the entirety of the solution. We work with the client to define the architecture, and now we're in the process of integrating all those components. And this summer we'll be launching that and seeing how it goes.
Wow! So you cover. Yeah, so you cover both the space segment and the ground segment of the industry?
Yeah, so we do, and actually, we work with satellite communication providers, but we also do a lot of work around 5G, right, with the terrestrial wireless providers, and actually all the communication. So what we actually work on everything in communications from the equipment vendors to the Ericssons and Nokias of the world, to the application providers, through the hyperscale web service providers, to the service providers themselves. So we really work across the entirety of the communication industry. And within that, obviously in the service provider segment is the satellite providers. But not only is it satellite, it's also wireless 5G, it's fiber to the home, it's a variety of different things. And I think that's one of the things, because we've got so much competencies, that as we've engaged, especially around LEO projects and HAPS projects, that this convergence with our ability with wireless is really playing out well and bringing extra value to our clients. Because you start thinking about, with whether it be LEO or HAPS, how do you connect those to a wireless 5G? What's the 3GPP standards, and et cetera? And being on both sides of that fence with our engineers really brings value.
Right, right. And you cover the whole world, right? Capgemini is worldwide.
Yeah, we are. We're pretty much worldwide, not in every country, but in I think it's 65 or 70 countries that we're in, throughout Europe, the US, and we work with service providers all over the world.
You must be very busy, man.
No, we stay busy.
Right.
I don't travel as much as I used to right now, but I'm hoping that sometime that changes and I can get back out to see my clients again.
Right. So primarily, you're a engineering and consulting R&D company. Is that fair?
So what does that mean? That means everything from defining the consulting on the front end of the project to define the architecture. But a lot of what we do, that defining the architecture and consulting turns out to create a blueprint for a customized solution. And then a lot of what we do is we do the software and the hardware engineering, and or if we can get components off the shelf, we'll do the system integration in order to be able to bring things together quickly and efficiently, yet customized. Because as you know, most clients, I mean, I've been at this, as you mentioned, 5 years. Almost every one of our projects is different and unique. There's certain elements you can take and reuse, but each client has a very different set of objectives and challenges that they're trying to tackle.
Now, having been in the business so long and having tackled so many projects, I'm sure you have a certain wealth of knowledge. And like you've already mentioned some of them, your knowledge of the 5G and IT and all, and the mobile telephony and all that. What do you see as some of the problems that some of the satellite companies are facing now with all these changes that's going on in the industry and developments?
I would say there's one problem, and there's a lot of them, but one that kind of traverses the entirety of the communication industry right now is services. If I can apply it to the 5G networks, if I for a moment, if I think about 5G network operators, they're in the process of rolling out a multi-billion-dollar rollout of 5G. And as you do that and you spend all that money, if you think about it, most of their subscribers are consumers. Most consumers aren't going to pay more for 5G. Right? They've trained us, we get more for the same price.
Right.
So how are they going to pay for that network, right? They've got a conundrum. They have to roll out 5G. It's going to cost billions, otherwise they're not going to be competitive. But how do you pay for that? And the way that they're looking at it is they're starting to evolve away from just thinking of their wireless network as consumers and doing a lot more enterprise applications and starting to figure out how do you go after the Internet of Things in order to generate revenues. And I see the same thing happening in satellite. Satellite providers are moving away from a time when their business case will be supported by only doing backhaul or wholesale type services. And I see a lot of my satellite customers looking at how do I do more B2B services? How do I start becoming, instead of just a wholesaler, a value-added application provider to the enterprises? And that's really important, and it's a really big challenge for the satellite providers to tackle, because it's very different to run an organization that does B2B or does wholesale or backhaul for a dozen or 2 dozen large clients versus trying to serve thousands of enterprises. Everything from ordering, provisioning, network operations, customer care. All that is very, very different, the entirety of your system and the way you run your business. And I see that as a pretty big challenge facing the satellite operators right now. because they're all moving from, they've got geostationary, but they also are going to start deploying LEO. And as I mentioned, we're working with some clients around HAPS. That's all to get into the services business.
Right.
That's going to be an interesting change for them that they've got to tackle.
Yeah, the satellite industry is not really known to be quick on adopting new technologies, and they're kind of attached to some of the legacy technologies that they have. So is that something you can help them, navigate? Like you mentioned, the Leos. The Leos are really all out in deployment now. Starlink, one of the leaders, which is owned by SpaceX, has deployed over 1,000 satellites already, which is, the satellite industry started in the 50s, about 60 years ago. And, that 1,000 is already 1/3 of all the satellites up there. And they did it within a year and a half. And that these LEO operators, the SpaceX and Amazon, these Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos of Amazon are two of the richest people, number 1 and 2. They kind of go back and forth the last few weeks. So that this is going to dominate the landscape in the next few years. So how can your company help satellite companies adopt that?
It's interesting you talk about how the 1,000 that they've deployed is 1/3 of what's up there. I just saw a report from Statistica that said that there's going to be over 40,000 satellites in the next 3 to 5 years. Right. So I mean, you're talking 3,000 to 40,000. It's an amazing transformation. Right. But if you look across, I mean, lots of companies are making the investment. You talked about two of the big names, but even you had on here Dave Rabin a few weeks ago on from Hughes, and he talked about Hughes making an investment in LEO as well, right? They had made an investment through OneWeb, and now that OneWeb's emerging, they're going to make another investment, another $50 million. So it's not just the brand new guys that are doing it. It's pretty much throughout the industry that they're having to make this transformation and realize that they've got to get LEO satellites up there. And I think if you think about where the reason why and why does it make so much sense, it's obvious. It's interesting that now we have the capability, the technology can do it, and that's always an interesting thing. But there's also a convergence with the Internet of Things, right? Right. In that same Statistica report I talked about, there 25% of the sensors that are out in the world, according to this report, are actually served by satellite. Right. So there, it's a proven market that sensors and machine-to-machine communication is already being served by satellite. And as that machine-to-machine communication grows, it's a great opportunity. And usually those, not always. You do automated driving. There's jitter and latency issues. But in a lot of the IoT applications, jitter and latency is not as big of a deal. So if you can get up there and you can serve those markets, it's a huge growth opportunity for satellite providers. And I think that's the fundamental, that's the convergence of the investment in LEO, the investment in HAPS, plus the desire to move to services. And if you think about what are those services going to be on, it's going to be layered on top of all these sensors that are going to be out there, right? And how do you drive value to those companies that need to use the sensors? And all that convergence coming together is really making a very interesting time in the market.
Right. Are you working on any of the LEOs right now?
We have a couple of projects that we're working around LEO. We're working with most of them aren't announced, but we're working with one company that's working on finalizing. They just made an award of their primary contractor, and we're trying to get in and be part of that solution. And with that one, we're looking at a few things where we're going to do some network management software. We're working with another company to take a new ASIC that is just coming to market and create a modem so that they can do beam hopping and different things like that with a ASIC-based modem that would be a whole lot less costly than the current modem technologies and reduce the cost to roll it out. Yeah.
Right. Well, we have to talk about the global pandemic, because in an article that I wrote about the year in review of the past year, installers, and systems integrators have actually been heavily affected because of the restrictions to travel and all that. Of course, this outlook for this year is a lot better, but since you are an engineering company, which you go after business all over the world, and you have to be physically present in most of them. So how does that affect your business? How do you see it going forward?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it a moment ago. One of the biggest things that's affected me personally is not traveling. For the first month or two, I thought it was great, but now it's pretty hard to connect and meet with people without being able to go and see them. So that disconnect from society is probably the biggest challenge. But from a business perspective, we've actually done quite well. Our business has not been affected, especially in communications. The demands on communications providers around the world are actually as high as they've ever been. And our work has gone on. Now, there's other companies, and a lot of our clients have had challenges. Jack Waters was on recently, and he talked about the fact that they saw a huge drop off initially, but then they figured out through services, and I bring that up because it's again another reference with services. He figured out through services how to rebuild his business, right? And I think that's also part of what's happening with the satellite providers, right? They did a lot of wholesale services, cruise ships, airlines, things like that. A lot of that stuff is not generating the revenue it was before, right? Now it'll come back. But during this interim time, they've spent time figuring out, okay, what other services can we provide? What other things can we do? And I think long term, it's going to turn out to be a good thing for these providers that have now taken that time, invested, and figured out how to do new and different services. It's going to accelerate their business as they come out of the pandemic.
So you see a lot of business for your company going forward. From the satellite
we've been very blessed. We grew, last year we grew in our communications segment by about 6%. The company overall did quite well, but the communication segment itself, it grew about 6%. And we see that growth this year accelerating and over the next couple of years. You mentioned we've recently become part of Capgemini. And that's actually been a benefit as well, because Capgemini is into not only the engineering of the communications, but into IT, business processes, the cloud, data centers, security. And as we bring all of that together, I think we bring an even better value prop to our clients. And I think it's gonna allow us to further accelerate, not only through this year, but for the next few years. It's a really interesting place to be.
How big a part is the satellite part of your specific division?
Well, we work with a lot of customers. I'd say we've got about 8 customers we work with. And we don't release the financials of each one of those, but it's fairly significant in that we work up and down the BSS, OSS, into the communications. We do a lot of work around testing and provisioning and automation of the provisioning. There's new work we're doing in Europe right now that we're engaged with a couple of European providers in order to get some new stuff going there. Most of our work is here in the Americas today, but we're working on doing more and more in Europe.
Right, because actually the reason I was asking is the satellite segment of the communications field is actually a very small part. It's only between 1 to 2% of the telecom. It's $200 billion, but the telecom industry is like $3 trillion.
So why does it matter? It does matter for a couple of reasons. One, I think that our heritage gives us an advantage, right? We've got people in our company that have been working with satellite providers for 30 years. And I think too, maybe 10 years ago, there wasn't a direct link, but now with LEO and HAPS and 3GPP and 5G, the capability to interact between the networks is growing. And then you layer on top of that software-defined satellites, in the satellite communication topology starts looking an awful lot more like your standard communication topology. It's not exact, but it's much more like it than what it was 5 years ago, right? So all of that stuff coming together, what we found is, there's between our engineering competencies and the synergies of the technologies, that it's becoming a sweet spot for us.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you've given us a really good overview for your company, what you've done and what you can do. Is there anything else you want to add, Ken?
I think the last thing I'd like to add is that this is a very exciting market. It's
Mm-hmm.
evolving quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that the transformation that's underway is one that's going to be really, really important. It's going to be critical to the future of satellite. Those companies that are able to make this transformation from that of wholesale to B2B service enablement are going to be the ones that are going to be successful. Regardless of the investments made in the satellites that are up in the air, if you can't quickly and efficiently turn services up for your clients, you're going to have trouble. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing that we're going to be watching in the area that we really want to focus and talking to our clients about is how do we help them move away from static kind of setups into much more agile, much more versatile, service-enabled environments.
Right. Yeah, I do agree with you. I think, this decade, more than any other decade, this is my third decade now going on my third decade in the industry, is fraught with a lot of challenges and it's really transformational. So it's good to know that a company like yours with such experience and pedigree, can be relied on, in these times, So I'm sure you're all ready to take any projects that might come your way. So how can they reach you, Ken? What's your website?
Our website is capgemini.com, and just go ahead and come on and check us out. We'd love to work with clients. It's been a fun run, and we'll see you in the market. Thank you for the time today, Virgil. This was awesome. I really enjoyed the discussion.
No, thank you. I learned a lot too, Ken. Thank you very much. Ken Grelck, the Global Communications Industry Lead of Capgemini Engineering.